Good morning, everybody. Yeah, and thank you for attending session 2 of this awareness into technology for visually impaired people. I'm Andrew Jones from Blind Veterans UK. Presenting today, we've got Jamie Bruce from Guide Dogs, Matthew Horspool from the Brailless and Other Ventures, and Richard Powell, who isn't presenting directly today, but from Henshaws, who's part of the group. Yeah, I'd also just like to take a moment to thank the Technology Association of Visually Impaired People, TAVIP, who I think, Julian, we've got on the session with us observing. They kindly uploaded last week's session onto their YouTube channel. So I think I've sent that link around previously, but if you want to access it in a different way, it's available on their YouTube channel. And they've also got some other resources there if you want to check those out as well. So what we're going to do today is concentrate on utilizing the iPhone and iOS when we're working and supporting people with a visual impairment or who are blind. So I'm going to firstly pass over to Jamie. Is that okay, Jamie?
Thanks a lot. Great. Thanks very much. Everybody hear me okay, yeah? I hope so. I am using my phone and the laptop camera, so I've got like sort of two things going on. The reason I've got my phone on is because in a minute I'm going to share my phone screen and we're going to go through some of the low vision settings and the adjustments that you can make to your iPhone to enable someone with with low vision, sight impaired perhaps, but not quite needing the full screen reader, but going through the sort of settings and adjustments that you can make that would benefit people there. So what I'm going to do is try and share the screen of my phone. Bear with me. Audio, and what should happen now is the phone screen. Any minute. Good. So I can see my phone now on the screen. I hope everybody else can.
Yep, Jamie.
Yep,
yeah,
good.
we can see that.
Brilliant. Okay, so let me just go to. Okay, so right on the screen is just the home screen of like an iPhone, and as I scroll through, you've got your apps, as they would be appearing on the screen. Also, what can happen as well quite often if you're going to encounter someone who say, well, they're having difficulty using their phone, is the background, the wallpaper is maybe in this instance what I've changed the wallpaper to the weather, so you can see what weather I've got outside my window. When it goes lock screen, it starts actually raining, it starts moving. So you could have like live action wallpaper, or they could have a photograph. Quite often people have got photographs working for guide dogs. I see people who have got photographs of previous dogs that they've had on their phone as their wallpaper. And what you've got there is you're looking at pictures on a picture. So it's very difficult to sort of tell the apps that are on the home screen when you've got that, either even just a light colour background or or worse, a picture. So the first thing that you would try and get someone and encourage them to do is to change the wallpaper. It's very simple to do on iOS now. All you really need to do is do a long press on the home screen. So if I press and hold, up comes the options to edit up in the top corner, top left corner. So if I tap on edit, and then you've got your options, the open menu. You can actually customize the wallpaper, and you can change it to dark mode, and you can alter the apps to look, monochrome. They can go into grayscale, or the apps can appear a lot easier to see. So you can really personalize that for people too. What we want to do is edit the wallpaper. So if you go into edit wallpaper, and then looking down at the bottom, what we're wanting to do, I always just go to color, and then which is just a second from the bottom left, tapping on color, and I'll tap and hold it to bring up the color options. There they are there. And I tend to nice one with just a solid black color, and then you've got a slider along the bottom, which I can then slide up, and it goes to a very, very dark black. And then I'm going to select that with tapping on the done in the top right. And now I've got a good solid black wallpaper, which is a lot easier, and the apps are more defined, standing out as they are. And often enough, you know, when you do that for someone and then hand the phone back to them, they're like, "What a difference!" You know, people really can tell the difference that that's made. Then to go into some of the more basic accessibility, well, not accessibility settings, just the sort of display settings. Invariably, people have already been into display and brightness, and in display and brightness, they may have changed it from light mode to dark mode. These are options. I always like to say to people about the dark mode, and then every time I'm doing a change here, it's like a small change, and then handing it back to the person to say, "Well, how's that? Do you like that better?" Automatic would change it from light to dark depending on what the app is and things. Bold text as we scroll down, it's always good to turn the bold text on for someone with, you know, with low vision, because it's going to make the text, we're always looking for that big, bright and bold aspect, and also the text size. Now in the text size menu here, there's only so big that you can actually make the text size in the display and brightness settings, and it will just go to sort of what, like, just kind of big is what and that's kind of where you sometimes you get people who says, "Oh, but like, you know, I've changed my phone to suit, but I still can't use it," because they've made the text size as big as they can in the display settings. And then you can go further by taking a trip to accessibility. So when you open up the settings, you just scroll down the settings, and just below general on your iOS menu is accessibility. So tapping on accessibility opens up the accessibility menu. Within that, there are many, many, many adjustments that you can make. What we're looking for as you scroll down, the top of them is vision adjustments to change the phone settings for vision improvement. We're going to go past VoiceOver. I'm going to leave that to Matthew later on. And we're looking down to display and text size, which is kind of like the display and brightness, but more for with accessibility settings. And you can see when we open up the display and text size, you've got the bold text. We could turn that on and off. Probably you've already done that in the display settings. And then we can tap on the larger text. Now, when the larger text is enabled, you can then, on the little slider at the bottom of the screen, you can see the text getting gradually bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it, putting the larger text up to full can be a bit tricky, because sometimes when people have got, you know, the benefit from having the text as big as that, as large as it can go, but they can then, some apps, not so many nowadays, but some apps still don't don't utilize the larger text option, or they don't recognize it. So what can happen sometimes is that the text can be bigger, but the spacing isn't. So you get that kind of overlapping with the text. The text sort of the top line overlaps the bottom line when you can see some text, and the larger text can not quite fit in some text boxes because the app's not developed to have access to the larger text option. Sometimes I tend to just go a little bit lower than full screen, than full magnification. Then when you come back out of the larger text option, the menu has, everything's changed. Everything's made a lot bigger, text wise. So you can hand that back to the person looking down. Every sort of step, that could be enough. You know, you could maybe just, having changed the background color, having made the background more solid, the apps are standing out, and then also you've made the text nice and big and large, and that could be enough for someone, because that larger text is going to be, you know, all of their messages are going to be bigger, all of the emails that come through are going to be in larger text, everything that they're using to read is going to be much larger text. You can then go down through the display options and do just little incremental steps, things like reduce transparency, which would make that like when you've got a label on the screen, the typical iOS is that the background sort of shows through like a label or a button, but to reduce the transparency gives a more solid thing, enabling someone to to see the text against that background a lot better, which is always what we're after. Always thinking about increasing the contrast. It's the same as making bold text. These are little steps that you could just sort of, go through, turning them off, turning them on, and seeing if the person likes it better, or if they don't find any benefit. And for many people, as I say, just going through some of these steps is enough. We can also do things, as you see down here, to put on invert the screen, which is essentially, it's like what I've done here on having my screen on dark mode. But if I was to change it to the smart invert recognises that it is in dark mode, so it's not changed. But if I were to go onto an app or a website that doesn't recognise the dark mode, then that inverted contrast, when I've got the smart invert on, would change it to be in that light text on a dark background. The difference between the smart invert, if I turn that one off, it goes off, and the classic invert is the classic invert just inverts it regardless of what it is. It doesn't recognise that you've already got it in dark mode. It's going to switch it back to invert. Also, the classic invert will invert everything, so the whole screen will be inverted. That's like pictures as well as text, whereas the smart invert is going to recognise, as well as being in dark mode, that you're looking at text and there's an image, so the image will stay in the colour that the image is, whether it's a photo or a picture, and the text will be inverted. Going down further, you can also use the colour filters, and this is where you would really go into sort of fine tuning it for someone who didn't recognise the colour. If they had, if they were like really colourblind, and there was some colours that stood out better for others. So it's something that you can really go into and really personalise that. It's something that you would use to work alongside the person and get the benefits there. Now, there's a couple of things as well which we want to go through too. If I go to coming out of the oh, there's my laptop beeping. If we come out of the display and brightness menu, and we're going to go down into the magnification. Now, working through how magnification works, as I'm demonstrating this with my phone being shared on the screen, we do have an issue where if I turn on the zoom and magnify the screen, I will see it, but it won't be shared. So if I share the screen, you won't see it magnifying. But hopefully I'll talk you through. If everyone's got their phones and is going through the menus I am, you'll see how it works when you do it on your phone. If not, as I'm doing it with the screen shared. So when we turn on the zoom, you tap onto the zoom menu just below VoiceOver. And I would say the first thing to make sure that you're doing, if the zoom is off, is that the zoom is turned on to full screen. You've got the options, you scroll down, you've got the zoom region here. And on the zoom region, you've got options for either full screen or window zoom. I would always recommend turning on a full screen. The window is like basically when you turn on the window zoom, you've got this like a little panel, as if you're using a small magnifier and you're moving it around the screen. Even on a much larger screen, like someone using like Zoom or magnifier on their laptop, the window zoom can be confusing. I've not really met anyone who benefits from the window zoom. Everyone prefers the full screen zoom that I know. I mean, I'm here to be corrected. If there is anyone that likes the window zoom, I'd like to know. So I always turn it on at full screen zoom, and then turning zoom on. When you've turned the zoom on, your options, you've got the controls that you use are gestures to increase and decrease and to turn on the magnification. So the gesture for zoom is a 3-finger double tap. So when you double tap the screen, and you've got about quarter of a second between each tap to make it a double tap. So a 3-finger double tap turns the zoom on, and double tap turns the zoom off. Now, when the zoom is turned on with your double tap, you then use your 3 fingers to sort of paw around the screen and just to drag the screen around. So you've made it as big as you can, or as big as you'd like it to be, and then you can move the screen to drag. If you want to make it bigger or smaller with your 3 finger double tap, you double tap and hold, and then draw your finger up to increase, and draw your 3 fingers down to decrease. Wherever you double tap with 3 fingers on the screen is where the zoom, where the magnification will be centered. So if you were to double tap 3 fingers up in the top corner, it would zoom into the top corner. And similarly, down the bottom, that's where it's going to zoom to. Using the zoom and using that 3 finger takes a bit of coordination. And what you can do, if someone doesn't quite get that 3 finger double tap, or or finds the kind of the dragging around a little bit difficult, you've got the option to show someone the zoom controller. So if we scroll down to the zoom controller, which is just below keyboard shortcuts and above the zoom region. So if we tap on the zoom controller, and if you're playing along at home, if you tap on turn the zoom controller on to show controller. Now it's just the same as I can't share magnification, I can't share the zoom controller either. So while it appears on my screen, you can't see it while I'm sharing it here. But when you turn on show controller, you'll see that there'll be a little. It's like a target. It's a circle with a sort of image of a kind of joystick with arrows up and down in the center of the circle. That's appeared on your screen, and if you just sort of put your finger on that, you can then drag it around. So if you just tap your finger, you can move that zoom controller anywhere you want it to be on the screen. So you can move it out of the way of some text if you want to read it. Wherever you put it on the screen, that's where it's gonna stay. Once I've turned the zoom controller on for someone, I would always go down to the bottom of the zoom controller menu, and then the first thing I would do is turn the idle opacity up to 100%. That's just meaning that when you're not using the controller, it's still very visible on the screen. If you have it down, I think the default's 50%, and if you have it down at 50, it's going to fade. When someone's not using the controller's going to sort of fade to 50% and maybe not be as noticeable for someone with low vision. Also, I would go into the color menu. I should say the idle opacity. If you tap on idle opacity, it's just a slider at the top that you can slide up and down. I would slide that up to 100%, as I say. And then going into the color menu, and then it's the option to ask the person that you're supporting what colour, is there a colour that they prefer? Often enough, there's colours that can, really stand out. What you're looking for is a colour that's going to stand out against their background. I mean, if you've got the black, bold background, pretty much any of these are going to stand out better than others. But for me, I always pick blue. Blue stands out quite good for me, is the way it is. And then once you've selected the colour that you want, your controller, if everybody's got one on the screen, what you do is if you double tap, the default setting is double tap the controller to turn the zoom on, double tap the controller to turn it off. And if you double tap the controller, once the zoom is on, you can then rest one finger on the controller. And if you get it right just in the middle, the controller stretches to become a rectangle. So that rectangle, when you've stretched the controller, represents the phone screen, and where your finger is on that rectangle is where the zoom is on the screen. You can also, by default, if you use rather than double tap the controller, if you just do a long press with your finger, that will give you a quick zoom, and then keep your finger on the screen, and if you move it around, it will move around the screen with your finger as it goes, like so. So that's the zoom controller. It's given that one finger control of the zoom instead of having to use the 3 finger double tap. Now, when you've got the controller on, the 3 finger double tap to zoom in is still there. So you've got both options to work with. Okay. Also, moving on further, so what we've looked at is changing the display settings, making things bolder, easier to see, and then looking at screen magnification. Now, when you've got the magnifier on the Zoom, that's going to work regardless of what's open. It'll work across the board for anything that's open on the screen, any apps, any websites, emails, everything, you can zoom in. So that's always going to work. But if you're looking at someone who's needing increasing levels of magnification and much larger, they may be thinking about needing to use some spoken content. So if we carry on down, we're coming back out of the Zoom menu. So back out of the Zoom menu into the accessibility menu, and then we're looking down to the option below motion, which is called read and speak. So opening up the read and speak menu, you've got a couple of things that you could turn on here. You could turn on the accessibility reader, which will read or listen to text in a full screen view. And also, so what you could do with accessibility reader on is if you've got text that's text on a website, which is maybe in columns or hard to see, the accessibility reader will take that text and make it into a much easier way to follow the text and also read it aloud is the thing. And you can have it reading aloud and highlighting words and text as you go along. Then you've got the speak screen and the speak selection. So with the speak screen option, turning that on, you've got when that's on, all you need to do to read the full screen is draw two fingers from the top of the screen down, and that will read the screen aloud. And if you look at when you're in the speak screen menu, when you're looking at how it reads, you can also turn the highlighting on, which will customize the way that the highlighting is, and it'll display, as you can see in the highlight menu, you've got the option to display words, sentences, or both words and sentences as it happens. So when you draw your finger down, you could again, you can really fine tune this and pick the color. You can have a background color, you can have it underlined, and you can change which colors you want. This is something to be working along with the person, and saying which colors that they if they wanted it to highlight, or if they couldn't see at all, just have it being read aloud. And then you've also got the option coming back onto the speak selection. So rather than having the full screen read, if you have speak selection, you're turning that on, then it's a sort of tap to speak. So when you turn the speak selection on, you've got the controller, you've got the speech controller that comes on. But what I like to do, rather than turning the speak selection on and using the speech controller, because the speech controller can be a pretty difficult one to manage in terms of when you've got the speech controller on, it appears on the screen as a little it's like a play button. You can play and pause, you can speed up and slow down, and then it disappears away into the side with a speech controller. But a little tip that I want to share, which I really like to do at this stage, is going back into the Zoom menu. So we're coming back out of Read and Speak into the Zoom menu, and we're going back to our friend the Zoom controller. And then on the Zoom controller, you've got your options there, controller actions. Now the default is the double tap, zoom in, zoom out, and then the default that you'll have there on the single tap will be show menu. But if you tap on the single tap, and rather than having it ticked on show menu, you could tick it onto speak and touch. And then the triple tap doesn't have any default, so you might as well, for triple tap, have that as show menu. And then when you've got the speak on touch assigned to the Zoom controller, if you tap your controller and then
The Zoom controller allows quick access to Zoom controls. When zoomed out, drag to reposition.
so if you tap on your controller and then tap some text on the screen, then you've got this speak and touch assigned to the Zoom controller, which is already on your screen. So it really makes things a lot simpler for someone, and then you've given them the Zoom controller, and then if something like maybe a text message, they'll be able to see that there is text there, although not read it, which is kind of where I'm at. I could see that there is that paragraph at the top of the screen, but I would have to really zoom it in pretty big to see it to read. But I could tap the controller and then tap.
The Zoom controller allows quick access to Zoom controls,
Tap the paragraph, and it would be read aloud. To stop it, you just tap the controller again, as I did there. So these are really quite handy little tips, and setting someone's phone up to that level with the high contrast background, the Zoom controller on, and then maybe the larger text, and then assigning that tap, speak on touch to the Zoom controller can really open up how someone can then use their phone again. I'm aware that I need to give Matthew some time, but I just want to say one more thing. On your on the phones, on if you bring down the control panel, depending on what phone you've got, if you've got one of the I think it's from the 10 onwards, which didn't have the home button, you would swipe your finger diagonally from the top right corner into the center of the screen to bring the control panel. But if you've got an SE, or I think it was up to the SE22 that's still got the home button, you would draw your finger up from the bottom center of the screen to bring the control panel up. Now, on the reason I'm bringing up the control panel is really handy to know this as well, because on the control panel, you can add shortcuts to the vision accessibility, low vision settings that we have. So if we want to change or add something to the control panel, it's just a long press on the control panel, and then it starts to go into edit mode, where all the little icons of the control panel have got options. You can move them around on the screen as well as you wanted, or you could delete them and take ones out that you don't want. But if we go to the bottom of the control and you've got add a control, tapping on that brings up all the options that you can add things onto the control panel. And if you scroll down that, so you're just scrolling right down to the bottom of the control panel and all the way to the very bottom, and you have the options for the vision accessibility options that you can add all of these things. So if you were someone who maybe needed a bit of the inverted, the contrast inversion, you can add that to the control panel and then get to it quickly on the screen. One of the things that I've done on my own control panel, if I just go and I just take that out of, there we go. So on my own control panel, I have added down in the bottom left there, you'll see I've added the text increase and decrease. So I can long press that, it can come up as it's a full screen. You can see the option, and then just by bringing that down, I can then change the text size as and when I want it to be. So lots of shortcuts there, and a good few little tips and tricks that can really help someone and change the way that they're using and accessing their phone. So yeah, that's how I would set a phone up for someone up to a stage. And any one of these stages, as I say, it's always a case of checking in with the person that you're supporting and making sure at every step that that's good for them. You could stop whatever at any one of these bits that can help the person. And now I'm going to stop sharing my phone and hand over to Matthew.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody is doing well. Thank you, Jamie, for that excellent overview of low vision settings on a phone. We're going to turn our attention now to VoiceOver. And I want to preface this part with an apology to everybody. Rather like the issue that we had with Jamie, where parts of Jamie's screen, parts of the accessibility options weren't screen sharing properly. We had the same problem, but significantly worse with VoiceOver, where no matter what I did, trying to share the screen and get VoiceOver to come through wasn't working terribly well. So I have found a solution to this problem, but it involves me using quite a complicated setup, and it means that I'm not able to use my camera today. So I do apologize that I'm not able to show you my face. You will be able to see my screen shortly, and hopefully that will help that. Also, for this part of the session in particular, I'm very sorry. I didn't realize when there was the slight issue with spotlighting earlier on. We have a BSL interpreter in the room. Thank you very much for doing that. Hopefully you'll be able to understand the synthetic speech and be able to interpret that, but there will be quite a lot of screen reader audio as we go through the next part of the session. So, VoiceOver, it's a screen reader. What is a screen reader? So far, we've looked at lots of settings, and we've touched on features that we might think of as screen readers. Things like speak screen. I mean, speak screen reads the screen, right? So it's a screen reader. Kind of, but kind of not. The thing about all of those features that Jamie's just shown us is that basically, you need to be able to see the screen in order to make use of those features to their, to their full potential. Where VoiceOver differs is that you don't need to be able to see the screen. So VoiceOver can read the screen, a bit like how Speak Screen reads the screen. You can also be very detailed about what you read, even more detailed than Speak Selection. You can tell it to speak a particular icon. You can tell it to spell that icon out, a letter at a time, or a word at a time, or a line at a time. You can speed up and slow down the voice. You can change the voice. You can, it completely changes how the phone works, so that somebody who cannot use the screen or cannot see the screen, sorry, can still make use of this big slab of glass that is a touch screen. So that's what a screen reader is in that context. I'm now going to share my screen, and hopefully it will work. Share screen. Now, I talked about a Braille display in the last session. Just for this part of the demonstration, I am actually using a Braille display, so you don't hear my VoiceOver. So, how do we turn VoiceOver on and off? Well, the first way we can do it is by going into settings, as Jamie's already demonstrated. So I will do that. I'm going to go to my home screen. I should just warn you, this is my personal phone. This is not a demo phone. I think I think we're okay, but you never quite know. So I'm going to go to settings. In settings, I'm going to go to accessibility. Accessibility, you'll see the top icon is VoiceOver. There we go. And when we double tap on, well, we tap on VoiceOver, the first item in there is VoiceOver, and it's turned on. So I'll allow you to hear it now.
Speech on.
There you go. VoiceOver is on. So obviously, if you were coming into this, VoiceOver would be off, and you would double tap on it, and VoiceOver would, or you would single tap on it rather, and VoiceOver would turn on. The first time you do that, you'll get a warning, and the warning will tell you that the gestures are going to change. It's worth reading that warning, but don't be alarmed by that warning. We're going to talk about why the gestures will change throughout the rest of that session, but that warning will come up, so you just tap OK on that warning, and then VoiceOver will be on. The other way we can turn VoiceOver on is through Siri. So actually what I'm going to do is turn VoiceOver off.
Off. Alert. Important.
Oh, there you go. There's another warning. Look.
Are you sure you want to disable VoiceOver? Cancel. OK. Button. VoiceOver off.
Okay, VoiceOver's off. We can get it back on. That's no problem. So we haven't really talked about Siri very much. Siri is a way of being able to talk to your phone and ask it to do things. And some people think that VoiceOver is Siri. Actually, VoiceOver is not Siri. VoiceOver is very different to Siri, but you can use VoiceOver and Siri at the same time, and many blind people will in fact do that. So I'm going to ask Siri now to turn VoiceOver. In fact, yeah, I am. I'm going to ask Siri to turn VoiceOver on for me. turn VoiceOver on. Now, this is where we find that the demo's got a bit wrong. That hasn't worked. I'm going to use another
VoiceOver on. Settings.
I'm going to use another method of turning VoiceOver on, which we'll come back to a bit later on. So in theory, you should be able to ask Siri to turn VoiceOver on. Because of the way that I'm sharing the screen, I'm not actually able to do that just at the moment. Hopefully the screen share is still working and I'm still in settings. So that's how to turn VoiceOver on. While we're on this settings screen, let's talk about these gestures and how these gestures are different. So normally, when you use a touch screen, you can see what's on the touch screen. And so what you would do is you would have a browse around with your eyes. You would find what it is that you want to tap on, and then you would bring your finger to that point and you would tap on it. So it's just one tap will cause something to open. Obviously, this is a disaster if you can't see. You've got no idea what you might be tapping on. And so the way that VoiceOver works is VoiceOver adjusts this so that when you tap on something, it doesn't actually do anything. It just tells you what you've tapped on. So I'm just going to tap on a random part of the screen now.
Speaking rate, 50%, adjustable, 1 of 1.
I've tapped on...
Swipe up or down with...
I'll come back to that in a second. I've just tapped on speaking rate. I'm actually going to go up a bit to find something that's a bit easier to work with.
VoiceOver practice, button, 1 of 1.
There you go. VoiceOver practice, that will do nicely. So what you should be able to see visually is that on the screen, VoiceOver practice, it's about halfway down. And what you should be able to see is that there's a rectangular box that's been drawn now around VoiceOver practice. If I move, if I tap a bit further up the screen...
What's new in VoiceOver?
You should see that the rectangular box has moved up to that link that is what's new in VoiceOver.
Learn more.
And now the rectangular box has moved up to learn more.
Double tap to activate the selected item.
And so on. You should be able to see that box moving up the screen. And if I go down the other way, you should be able to see the box moving back down the screen again.
Learn more. What's new in VoiceOver? VoiceOver practice, button, 1 of 1.
All right, brilliant. So wherever that box is what's selected, for lack of a better word. And if I want to effectively tap on whatever that box is around, what I have to do is do a double tap. But there's a box on the screen, right? So the box is showing that this VoiceOver practice button is selected. So I don't have to double tap precisely on the VoiceOver practice button. I could double tap anywhere on the screen now, and the thing that will be acted on is the thing that's got the little rectangle. So I'm just, for fun, going to double tap on the bottom of the screen.
Selected, general, button, 1 of 2.
And it's still brought up the VoiceOver practice area. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on the VoiceOver practice area here. The VoiceOver practice area is potentially very useful if you have got somebody who needs to practice their VoiceOver gestures. It literally is, it says on the tin, you swipe around and you tap on the screen and perform gestures and it tells you what they do. For now, I'm going to come out of here, but that proves how tapping and double tapping works.
Selected, selected, Braille, done, button. Settings, back button.
All right. There's another way to move around the screen. If I don't want to explore, what I was just doing there is called explore by touch. So it's touching on the screen, finding what things are, and then double tapping. Sometimes the things on the screen are so small, or there's some other reason why exploring by touch is not really what you'd want to do. In that case, what you can do is you can swipe right on the screen with one finger and swipe left on the screen with one finger. And what that will do is it will move the rectangular box that we've just talked about. It will move that in a left to right, top to bottom motion. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to go to my home screen. The gesture for going to the home screen, I'm on a phone without a home button, and actually the gesture is not dissimilar to the gesture that you would use with VoiceOver turned off. I'm going to put my finger at the very bottom of the screen, and I'm going to drag my finger up. So you heard a little pop noise there. You heard another one
Lift
there.
for home.
And you heard it, actually. It said lift for home. So I'm going to lift my finger now to go to the home screen. And it didn't say anything, but I know I'm on my home screen. So I'm going to just tap on the top left-hand corner of the home screen.
WhatsApp. Beta. 30 new items. Double tap to open.
And you'll notice if you just wait a tiny little bit, like maybe wait 2 or 3 seconds, VoiceOver by default is going to tell you what to do. It says double tap to open. So if I double tapped on WhatsApp, it would open WhatsApp. But what I'm going to do now is just swipe right, and you'll see that the rectangle is going to move to the right.
Outlook. 65 new items. Mail. 104. Messenger. 8 new items.
So it's now in
Double tap to open.
There's the VoiceOver hints again. It's now in the top right-hand corner of the home screen. It can't, if I swipe right again, it can't go any further right. So
Facebook. 50 new items.
it's
Double tap to open.
it's moved all the way back to the left, and it's dropped down a row. So I can just keep swiping right, all the way through the home screen and not worry about, oh, I've gone, you know, I don't need to worry about swiping up and down. I just swipe left and right with one finger, and VoiceOver will take care of the moving up and down for me. Just to demonstrate that even more. So at the moment, obviously, I'm on the second row of the home screen on the leftmost app. So if I swipe left, VoiceOver can't move left any further. So what it should do,
Messenger. 8 new items.
there you go. And what it did
Double
do
tap.
is it moved all the way across to the right and then moved up a row. So swiping left and right. Actually, I think, to be honest, most people will probably swipe left and right more than they would explore by touch. But that's how those gestures work. You'll notice the VoiceOver hints. The VoiceOver hints, which is the thing that said double tap to open, are very context sensitive. Just to demonstrate that, at the very top of the home screen is the time on the status bar. I'm actually on holiday at the moment, so my time is not going to be the same as your time, but I am just going to tap on the time, and you'll hear how the hint is going to change.
21:46. Status bar item. Swipe down with 3 fingers to reveal notifications. Swipe up with 3 fingers to reveal the control center. Double tap to scroll to top.
There you go. So it's given me 3 different gestures that I could do from this particular point on the home screen. And if I just find a random icon, I'm actually going to go to the bottom right of my home screen now to messages.
Doc. Messages. Double tap to open.
There you go. The hint has returned to double tap to open. So it's well worth just encouraging people when they're very, very first using VoiceOver to just listen to those hints, because the hints will tell you what you need to be doing. I'm going to double tap on messages now. Remember, this is why I say double tap. So if you were sighted, you would tap on messages once and it would open messages. I can't tap on it once because tapping on it once is just going to tell me that it's messages. So I need to double tap. I'm going to double tap on messages, and a message thread is going to appear. It's one of those messages that we all like to see that says that your phone bill is ready. So I'm going to double tap on this now.
Messages. Filter button. Converse done with EE. Personal C. EE. Message. Text message. SMS. In message. Text message.
All right. So that part of the demonstration didn't work quite as well as I wanted it to, but nonetheless, we're now in a message thread with my phone provider. And I very quickly just went around. So like with anything else, you can just, swipe left and right now to read the conversation.
Add messages. Report spam. If you did not expect EE. Hi from EE. Welcome to New Zealand.
There you go. All right. So that's that. It'll read the message. Just to very, very briefly demonstrate what I was talking about, if I wanted to read this word by word.
Characters, words.
There's a gesture that I can use called the rotor. And having set the rotor to words, I can swipe up and down to read by word.
Hi, from EE. Welcome to New Zealand. To access your UK.
And so on and so on. So that's just very quickly demonstrating that. But what I really wanted to demonstrate here was how to type. So hopefully this has worked. Hopefully I've got a keyboard on the bottom of the screen.
V.
Yes, I have.
Marvelous.
Dictate. Right.
Dip.
Okay. So there's a keyboard on the bottom of the screen. So by default, the way that the keyboard works is actually just the same as how everything else in VoiceOver works. You find the letter that you want, and then you double tap on it to enter it. I'll just check that my phone is actually set that way.
Speak hints, containers, characters, words. Y. Message, text, speak hints, typing mode, standard typing.
Yes, it's on standard typing at the moment. So I'm going to type the word hello. The first thing I need to do is find the shift. And this is where some awareness of using the QWERTY keyboard is valuable, because I can kind of guess roughly where things are on the keyboard. So I know that the shift key is somewhere in the bottom left-hand corner. So I'm going to drop a finger there.
Shift.
There we go, right there.
Use the message.
Whoops.
Shift.
And I'm going to double tap on that to turn the shift on.
Selected. Shift.
And then I know that H is kind of somewhere just was to the left of the letter J. It's on the third row of the keyboard, I think. I'm just going to tap where I think it might be.
J.
All right, nearly.
Juliet.
Nearly. I found J. I want H. I'm going to go one to the left.
H. Hotel.
And you'll notice it gives me the phonetic alphabet there if I need it. So this is particularly useful if I'm trying to work out the difference between, say, V and B, D and T. Like if you're in a really noisy environment and you can't hear that, just wait a bit longer. It'll say Victor and Bravo and Delta and Tango, so you know what you're doing. But this is H. I'm going to double tap on it. Okay, it's entered the letter H. I'm now going to go and find the rest of the letters and just type them in quickly.
D. R. E. L.
Now,
Lima.
I'm on the letter L. I'm going to double tap on it. It's entered a letter L. By default, it would tell you that it's entered a letter L. As I say, this is my personal phone, and I've tried to set the settings up as close as possible to what it would be like as an out-of-the-box experience, but there's some things I didn't quite manage, and the keyboard echo is one of them. So it's not telling me that I'm typing the letters because I'm a fairly advanced VoiceOver user, and I know that it's going to work. But by default, it would. But anyway, it's typed to letter L. The focus rectangle is still on the letter L. So if I want to type two L's, actually all I need to do is just double tap a second time, and that will enter my second L for me. And then I'll go up to the letter O.
Mess. O. Oscar.
And space.
Space. Hello.
And it's told me that I've typed the word hello, which is very good of it, isn't it? Now that's fine, but there is a quicker way to do this, and that is you can set it up so that you drag your finger around the keyboard, and then when you find the letter you lift your finger, and as soon as you lift your finger, the letter gets typed in. This is called touch typing mode as opposed to standard typing mode, and you can get to it usually on the VoiceOver rotor. So I'm going to tap on the text field.
Messages. E-E-Y. T. Message. Text feed.
And I'm just going to rotate around to typing mode.
Words. Speak hints. Typing mode. Standard typing.
And I'm going to swipe down to touch typing.
Touch typing.
And I'm going to type the word everyone using touch typing. So I'm going to drag my finger around until I find the letter E.
G D E. Echo.
There's the letter E, and I'm going to release my finger, and it's typed that in straight away. And so you can actually get some speed up just by using this method as opposed to standard typing when you get a bit familiar with it.
V. E. R. Y. O. N. E. For everyone. Space.
Okay, much faster, still a bit slow. So something I can't demonstrate today because of how I've set this up is that you can, down at the bottom of the keyboard, there's a dictate button. You could dictate the text in if you wanted to do that. Or if you're a Braille user, notice now the on-screen keyboard has been replaced with some numbers, 3, 2, 1, 4, 5, 6. This is a Braille keyboard. I can put my phone in landscape mode and now just type using 6 fingers as though I'm typing on a Braille keyboard.
How are you today?
Much faster, even than touch typing mode. I think probably my Braille skills are such that I can probably type about as quickly as a sighted person can type on the on-screen QWERTY keyboard by using Braille screen input. So just wanted to give that a mention there. There's also, if you want it, an ability to handwrite on the screen. All of these options can be found in VoiceOver settings. There's also some very useful support documents on the Apple website that you can have a look at. So just if you do a Google search for using the iPhone with VoiceOver, you'll come across loads, some on the Apple website, some on the website of the Perkins School for the Blind. There's a website called Paths to Technology, which has a lot of good stuff on it. There's actually a website dedicated to all things Apple and visual impairment. The website is called Apple Viz, AppleVis. That's got lots of very useful getting started guides and things like that, and slightly more than getting started guides on. There's YouTube videos on all of this sort of stuff. So, it's impossible to show you where all of this is in half an hour, but hopefully it's giving you a flavor of what's possible and you'll be able to find the settings that you want. I want to show you a couple more things before we go to question and answer. The first thing I want to show you is you'll notice that I'm using a female voice on this phone. This is not the voice that comes with the phone by default. The phone actually comes with a number of voices, but the voice that's in use by default sounds like a bit of a pompous newsreader, to be honest. I'm not a big fan. His name's Daniel, and I'm sure he means well, but I'm not his biggest fan. So I've changed the voice. The option to change the voice is in VoiceOver settings. So I'm going to go back to the home screen.
Dock, photos, settings.
Going to go to settings.
Personalize vid selected. VoiceOver on button 1 of 7.
We'll double tap on VoiceOver.
VoiceOver switch button.
And we'll find speech.
What's VoiceOver voice speak adjust Braille speech button 1 of 5.
Now in here,
primary voice heading.
You'll notice I've done quite a bit of demonstrating in this area. I've got several voices already set up, but this is where you would change your voice. So if you've got somebody who really just doesn't like the default voice and wants to change it, come in here. And to be honest, I would just change the primary voice. I wouldn't worry too much about adding extra voices at this stage unless you particularly want to. It's really important that you do this. If you imagine you're looking at a screen and the screen is just slightly the wrong color, or there's slightly too much glare, or it's just slightly at the wrong angle, or any number of other things, like, I don't know, it's a touch screen, right? So you might have dropped a crumb on the touch screen or something, and this crumb is getting in the way of what you're trying to do. So you just want to get a duster and flick this crumb off the screen, right? Having the wrong voice is kind of a bit like that, really. It's not one of those things that you can leave till later, because actually having the voice that the person wants is probably going to make or break whether they actually enjoy using the phone. And of course, if they enjoy using the phone, then they're more likely to actually use it and practice what you're teaching them. So going in and changing the voice is actually just as important. Richard was talking a lot last week about lighting conditions and things like this. Changing the voice is just as important for a blind person as setting up the optimum lighting conditions for a sighted person. So when you're working with people, do go in and actually have a play with these settings and set them up as people would want them set up. The other thing, on this screen, there's an option for speaking rate. If I go back one screen,
speech.
I think even on the main VoiceOver screen,
adjust speaking rate.
There you go. It's right there. Adjusting the speaking rate is really important. It might be too slow for some people. It might be too fast for others, but make sure that that's adjusted so that people can actually understand what the speech is saying. The other thing I want to go back to is, you remember at the very start of this demonstration, I turned VoiceOver off and then couldn't turn it back on again because Siri wasn't working. And so I resorted to another method of turning VoiceOver on. That method is triple clicking either the home button or the power button, depending on whether your phone has a home button or not. If your phone has a home button, you triple click the home button. If your phone doesn't have a home button, you triple click the power button. And you can set up what that does. It may or may not be set to VoiceOver by default. It's a good idea to check that it's set to whatever you want it to be set to. So to do that, I'm actually going to go back one page again.
VoiceOver on.
So you'll see I'm back on the settings general accessibility screen, and I've got the VoiceOver, Zoom, etc. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of this screen, and I've got to scroll a fairly long way.
Rows 26 to 37 of 37.
And I'll go right down to the bottom.
Share accessibility shortcut. VoiceOver button 4 of 6.
To where it says accessibility shortcut, and it's set on mine to VoiceOver. But if I tap or double tap on here,
configure and then triple click.
You can see you can set this accessibility shortcut to whatever you want. If you've got somebody who actually doesn't need VoiceOver, but who does need to be able to turn Zoom on and off, the magnifier, you could set triple click home up to turn Zoom on and off. You could set it up, I think, probably to turn invert colors on. It can turn all sorts of things on and off, and you can turn them all on and off here. What I would say is if somebody is a VoiceOver user, it's a good idea to only have VoiceOver selected. So you can have multiple things selected in this accessibility shortcut list. You could have, say, VoiceOver and Zoom both selected. And then what happens is when you triple click the home button or triple click the power button, a little menu comes up that says, which of these do you want? Do you want VoiceOver or Zoom? The thing is, that menu is not going to speak. So if you're a VoiceOver user and you need to turn VoiceOver on and a menu's got in the way of turning VoiceOver on, then you're not going to be able to use this method to turn VoiceOver on. So if you're reliant on VoiceOver, make sure VoiceOver is the only thing that's selected in this list. But once that's selected, triple clicking the home button or the power button will turn VoiceOver back on. And that was the rescue gesture that I used when I turned VoiceOver off and couldn't then turn it back on again. Triple click the power button was what I did. The very final thing I want to touch on, and then we'll go to questions, is I've talked a lot about how VoiceOver changes the gestures on your phone. Jamie also talked a little bit about how Zoom, which is the magnifier, changes some of the gestures on your phone. This means that if you've got VoiceOver, which is the screen reader, and Zoom, which is the magnifier, running at the same time, some of the normal VoiceOver gestures are not going to work because Zoom will take them over instead. So this is not something to worry about. There's usually an alternative VoiceOver gesture in that case, but it is just worth knowing about it. It's fine to run VoiceOver and Zoom at the same time, but if you're doing that and then you go on to AppleVis and AppleVis tells you to do, what was it that Jamie was doing, a three-finger double tap or something. Well, a three-finger double tap does something in VoiceOver, but it also does something in Zoom, and Zoom's going to take over. So that's probably going to be a different gesture. So if the gestures don't quite stack up with what you're reading versus what you're experiencing on the phone, it's probably because VoiceOver and Zoom are on at the same time. So just have a play. Turn a double tap into a triple tap or a triple tap into a quadruple tap, and you'll probably find that it works out. All right, that's me done. I'm going to mute while I take my screen share down, because otherwise you're going to hear a lot of babble from VoiceOver. But that's me done. So while I do that, I will hand it back to Andrew, who can start the question and answer. And thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. That was really interesting. I'll spotlight Jamie as well. And the first two questions we've got on the chat were from Jamie. So Kathy was just asking about what hover text means.
Oh yeah, so hover text is when you've got the you could, if you draw your finger over the text, it will enlarge the text as you go across it. So it's kind of like a little magnifier that goes across the screen.
Brilliant, thank you. And then the next question from Susan is the vision accessibility, is there a shortcut, quick way to find this on each iPhone?
How do you mean?
Susan, are you able to elaborate more on the question if you're available?
Yeah, certainly. It seemed like quite a difficult way to access that. I just wondered if there was a quick fix, basically.
To access the Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, basically, when you go into the accessibility menu and
Okay.
you turn Zoom on, Zoom's on.
Right.
So
okay.
So you've turned Zoom on, and then you can go back to the home screen, and then Then when you do that 3-finger double tap, that will turn Zoom on. So Zoom always runs in the background.
Right. Okay.
And the same as when you've got the Zoom controller. So you basically just turn Zoom on, leave it on, and then the screen can be just as normal. Use your 3-finger double tap.
Right.
It will magnify. 3-finger double tap. Zoom's off. So
Brilliant.
then once you've actioned toggled that Zoom switch from off to on, the way to turn on and off is that 3-finger double tap.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah. So next question.
Can I also just draw your attention as well to what I was saying right at the end about VoiceOver, but it applies to Zoom as well, about the accessibility shortcut, the triple click the power button. So if you need to turn Zoom off completely for some reason, then setting up that triple click the power button through the accessibility shortcut to Zoom would also give you an easy way of turning it back on again if you need it.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, next question, probably for yourself, Matthew, is from Fraser. To get VoiceOver to turn on with Siri, I think there's more of a note really. To get VoiceOver to turn on with Siri, you just say Siri turn voice on/off. That's correct?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Yes.
That was because when you tried to do it on your phone during the demo, it didn't work. So I tried it on my phone, just kind of while we were sitting there, and then I worked out how to do it. So I was just pointing that out in case you weren't sure about that.
Yeah, no, I was sure, but thank you. I'll tell you why it didn't work. It's because in order to share the screen, I had to actually join the Teams call on my iPhone. So because my iPhone was on a call, Siri wasn't working and dictation wasn't working, and I've had to do a slightly funky thing with the audio in order to get VoiceOver to come through. So it was just literally because of the setup that I was in, but it does work for me most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Fraser, for that. That's great. Yeah, and then Vanetta's asked a question around are the demos that we've done this morning on the newest versions of iPhones, and would older versions potentially be a little bit different?
I don't think older versions would be that different. We've kind of just went over the basics, and I think from memory that would go back to, I think what we covered is probably from iOS 17 onwards, maybe even 16. I think. I don't think there's anything that we've spoke about which is on on 26.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned that the majority of differences in my head is the bit where some phones will still have a home button, older phones, and some and the newer versions won't. I think you've been quite clear on that, so that's great. So I think it's more to do with the operating systems, isn't it, or the version you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, for clarity, I was demonstrating on an iPhone 16 running iOS 26.5, I think, whatever the latest iOS is. So I was on not quite the latest hardware, but certainly the latest software. But yeah, I mean, as Jamie said, the low vision features probably go back as far as iOS 17 at least. To be honest, VoiceOver changes even less than the low vision stuff does. So actually, a lot of what I've just talked about goes all the way back to iOS 4 and iOS 5. You know, there's the settings might have been in a slightly different place. But really, yeah, this goes back a long way.
Thank you. And then Vicky, I think we've answered your question there, because your question was, do these work on all iPhones, or does it need to be a certain software or model? If you want us to expand on it, just add something to the chat. And then Don,
can I expand on the answer though? So it will work. Everything that we've just demonstrated will work on all iPhones. It will also work on all iPads. So if you've got someone that wants a slightly bigger screen, the layout of the screen is slightly different because it's a bigger screen. But all of the options we've just talked about will work on the iPad as well. There are some features, and they're very, very minimal, that will only work on the Pro phones, and that's because the Pro phones have a special chip in called a LiDAR chip. LiDAR is actually quite an advanced photography thing, so most people don't worry about it. It also allows a very, very small number of accessibility features to work slightly better. So we haven't touched on any of those features in this demonstration, but you can, for example, the iPhone has a feature called live recognition, where it can detect text and it can detect where your finger is and the text under your finger and things like that. Some of those live recognition features will only work on the Pro phones because of the LiDAR. But I mean, it's a very small subset of features. The vast majority, probably about 98% of the features, are going to work on all phones and all iPads.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. That's great. Yeah, we've got a question from Donna where I think, Matthew, you mentioned Apple Viz and some other training websites, and could these be repeated? I think probably the best thing to do would be for myself. I sent an email after the last session. I can just add the links into that email, if that's okay with everybody. And then we've got a next question from Jason. So how do I set up the rotor?
Okay, I was in two minds as to whether to cover this or not. So the rotor is probably one of the trickiest gestures for people to learn. The way that it works, it's actually set up by default. It's just a gesture. We were concentrating on using one finger to swipe left and right, basically, for most of that demonstration, left and right and up and down, but mostly left and right. If you put two fingers on your phone screen, and if you think of like a volume dial, you know how if you put two fingers on a volume dial and you turn them, it'll turn the dial. It's the same. It's the same sort of idea. You put two fingers on the screen and you twist them round to the right, and it moves the rotor one setting to the right. You twist them round to the left, and it moves it one setting to the left. And then, having moved the rotor around to the right setting, you then swipe up and down to adjust that setting with one finger. So in VoiceOver settings, accessibility, VoiceOver, you can go into rotor, and then you can go into rotor options, and you can control which options appear in the rotor so that it doesn't get too out of control. But the gesture is just built into VoiceOver and will just work out of the box.
Can I just ask something more there?
Yep.
Matthew, this is Jason, by the way, who asked the question. What I was actually asking, sorry, was how you set up the items to because so when you were talking earlier about typing, for example, and you used the rotor to change the typing mode. How do you? Is
that not in the rotor by default anymore? I'm sure it used to be. Okay.
Well, it is in there, but it's not. But it's not. So like I'm using the rotor and it's not coming up.
Right.
No. Yeah. So if you go into settings, and then into accessibility, and then VoiceOver, and then rotor, and then I think it's called rotor items. That'll give you a big long checklist of things that you can add to the rotor, and it will also allow you to reorder them into the order that you want them in. So check that typing mode is turned on in there.
It is.
The other thing, as Jamie was just about to say, some of it is context sensitive. So, for example, typing mode will only appear on the rotor if you're on a text field. I don't think it will appear if you're on the keyboard. I think you actually have to be on the text field, and having put yourself on the text field, it should then appear. And there's a few other items like that will, like, headings and links and things like that. If there's no headings on the page, then you might not find it.
Right, with you. Okay.
Thanks, Jason. Next question from Kathy. Is there an option to change the subtitle background to different colour?
Have a question?
The subtitle on for the subtitle that would appear on a video.
Sorry, Kathy, are you able to speak and elaborate?
I don't know if that's the case.
Sorry.
I can't see Kathy, so I can't voice her. because Kathy's deaf, so she's
I'm
going
sorry,
to.
Kathy.
So, I just need to find her. Bear with me.
If that's the case, which I imagine it is, the answer is I don't know. I'll have to find that out.
Right. Should we spotlight Kathy? Would that help, sorry?
Yes, if you could. She might have just took her camera off. I'll ask her the question again. Yeah, so it's anything, even when we've got Microsoft Teams, YouTube's, anything like that, they all have an option to have captions, which is usually black, or is there anything a preferred color? Do they have what if they don't have the options? Is there another option for that? So yes, if anybody wants to watch a video and they've got subtitles on, whichever platform they look at.
I think there probably is. I think it's probably not in the low vision settings. I think it might be under, if you go into settings and accessibility.
Can I just add a caveat to that? Sorry, Matthew.
Sure.
What we mean is, how the text just comes up on its own without a background. So
yeah, the options in iOS, if you go into the subtitles and captioning, which is it's in accessibility hearing, and then down from hearing you've got subtitles and captioning, and then in that menu you've got closed captions on or off, and then below that style transparent background is the one that's set by default. You can put that onto large text or classic outline text, or you can actually create a new style which can change the color of the background. So yes, if you're going to create a new style, then you can personalize what the subtitles you want them to look like.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. Did that cover that, Kathy, yet? Yeah, thank you very much. Right. So next question is from Vicky. So are the gestures and settings the same on an iPad?
Yes, I think so. The only thing to be aware of is that the iPad is a bigger screen, and sometimes the apps are in, I presume you're talking about VoiceOver gestures. If not, then apologies, maybe Jamie should answer this from a low vision point of view as well. But from a VoiceOver point of view, everything's the same, except that if the screen is split in half, when you're swiping left and right, it will try and stay in the same half until it can't. So if you're in the left-hand side, swiping left and right will go all the way top to bottom through the left-hand side, and then it will jump over to the right-hand side and it will go top to bottom through the right-hand side. So you might just want to, even if you don't know where it is, if you know you're on the wrong side of the screen, just tap randomly on the other side of the screen just to get yourself in the right place. Otherwise, you'll be swiping for quite a long time.
Thank you for that. That's the last question we've got in the chat. Has anybody got any other questions you'd like to ask?
Can I just ask Matthew just one thing on VoiceOver? How do you answer a phone call?
It's a really good question. Thanks for asking. So there's another gesture that I didn't talk about because I couldn't demonstrate it very easily. We talked about tapping with one finger and double tapping with one finger. There is also there are lots of different gestures, including tapping with 2 fingers, 3 fingers, 4 fingers. But the one gesture that's really quite key for people to know is called the magic tap. And the magic tap is a 2-finger double tap. So whereas a 1-finger double tap would just activate whatever the focus rectangle was on, a 2-finger double tap will perform the magic tap. If there's nothing particularly exciting going on the phone, that will be the play pause gesture. So it will play and pause your music. If you're in a text field, it will start and stop dictation. And if the phone is ringing, it will answer a call. And if you're on a phone call, it will end a call. So it's a 2-finger double tap, and yeah, if for calls, if the phone's ringing, it'll answer a call, and if you're on a call, it'll hang up a call. You could also just swipe around. You know, when the phone rings, there'll be a notification on the screen. You could just swipe to the notification and double tap on it. That would also work, and that could be potentially useful if you want to check the caller ID, for example. You could swipe around, but the basic gesture to answer a call is a 2-finger double tap.
Thank you. And I've just got a quick question as well, probably for yourself, Matthew, just around the screen curtain. Is that still used by people, or?
Yeah, it's really valuable. So again, I deliberately had the screen curtain off in this demonstration, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to see the screen. So what the screen curtain does is it completely blacks out the screen, so that a sighted person looking at the screen, it would look as though the phone was switched off. And the reason why particularly a totally blind person might want to use the screen curtain is you don't know who's looking at you, particularly if you're in public. If you're sat on a bus or a train, or you're quickly checking your phone in the interval of a concert or a theatre show or something like that, you don't actually know what the person next to you and what the person behind you and what the person opposite you, you don't know what they can see and what they can't see. You know, you don't necessarily even know if there's somebody there or not, let alone whether they're looking at your phone screen or not. And so by turning on the screen curtain, it ensures that you've got privacy. You can hear what VoiceOver is saying. You might have a pair of headphones in so that you can hear what VoiceOver is saying privately, but people looking at your screen won't be able to see what's on it. To turn the screen curtain on, it is a 3-finger triple tap. So you get 3 fingers relatively close together and you tap all 3 of them 3 times on the phone screen, and that will toggle the screen curtain on and off.
That's if you're running Zoom at the same time.
I'll just check that. No, even if I'm just with VoiceOver, actually, a 3-finger triple tap will turn the screen curtain on for me.
Sorry, can I just come in on that one? If you've got Zoom on and you do the 3-finger triple tap for the screen curtain on VoiceOver, it'll turn your speech on and off.
Speech, yeah. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, you need to do a quadruple 3-finger tap for that one.
I was mistaken the speech on and off for the screen curtain on and off.
No, that's really useful. Thank you for that, because yeah, sometimes get presented with a screen that's completely blank and it's talking, and actually that's just a function of how the phone's accessibility features. That's really interesting. We've just got a question from Bex. How do you navigate using VoiceOver in public places? Say you didn't want someone to hear your messages. I assume the answer would just be headphones.
Well, there's a few different answers. I'll just quickly plug my phone back in. You won't be able to see the screen. You won't need to for the purposes of this demonstration. Sorry about this. What I'm demonstrating is that A, my normal voice is a robot, and B, it's at very high speed. So I'm just swiping through my home screen now.
WhatsApp, data, 32 items, Outlook, 65 items, Mail, 104 emails, Messenger, 8 items, Facebook, 15 items, Signal, 22 items, Teams, 60 items, Zoom, double tap to open.
And just to give you a slightly longer example of that, I'll go into a message.
Messages, double tap to open. Messages, message, text field, editing.
I do apologise to the BSL interpreter.
Messages, I from welcome to New Zealand. To access your UK plan, log into 06 pound 24 hour 30 pound 7 days on one pass. Access max duration from the time you purchase them. Visit http://ads.co.uk. For free purchase. If you choose not to purchase a pass, it will cost you £2.46 per minute. 98 text and you won't have access to data. For more information on roaming, monitor usage and managing expenses.
All right, so that's reading a message. I don't know how many people can understand that message. I suspect not many. So the first thing is actually just by, if you get really good at using VoiceOver, you will have your speech rate cranked up over time, and actually that will give you a level of security and privacy just because people won't understand it. The other thing that I tend to do is actually hold the speaker of the phone up to my ear. Now, that makes me look really blind. So some people may or may not want to do that, but that is another option, and that's where screen curtain comes in really, really handy, because you just don't know who's looking over your shoulder at that point. The screen's visible to everybody, but that's another way to do it. Or, as you say, wear headphones, and even then there are different types of headphones. I think Richard might have touched on this last time. There's obviously your typical sort of earbuds, which go in the ear. There's headphones that go on the ear. There's also bone conducting headphones, which go kind of on your skull. So they don't actually go on your ears at all. They sit in front of your ears, and they actually use vibrations to send the sound through your bone structure into your ears. It sounds quite unpleasant. It's not as unpleasant as it sounds. It does take some getting used to, but the advantage of that is that your ears are still free to listen to what's going on around you, but you can still hear your phone. And so I would recommend that people at least try a pair of bone conducting headphones, or something like a pair of Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses, for example. If you had those Bluetoothed to your phone, the sound would come through your glasses. So there are various kind of takes on the traditional headphone. But yeah, something like a pair of headphones or bone conductors or Meta Ray-Bans or something like that would be what to do there.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Bex has just written, that is what I expected. Thank you. I use a single on-ear earbud, but I'm getting used to the increased speed. Thank you, Bex. So I think that is all the questions. I will just spotlight Richard. Everybody. So the next session that we've got is around Android, and going to be led by Richard from Henshaws. So that will be at 10 o'clock a week today. So yeah, we look forward to seeing you then. And then just one final thing, Matthew, we've had a note from Daniel, the voice. He's a little sad to hear what you said about it, because he really likes you.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. So, but anyway, joking aside, yeah, it's been lovely to have everybody here today. I'll send an email, just reminding everybody about next week's meeting, and then share any links that we've mentioned today. But yeah, thank you for everybody attending, and we look forward to meeting you all again next week. Bye bye.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye bye.